In 1999, Scottish video game developer Chris Sawyer chased a pipe dream. He was fascinated by amusement parks, and who isn't? And he wanted to create a game that captured the joy of being in one. And 1999 was the perfect time to do so, as it was the year of strategy games in North America, so RollerCoaster Tycoon was going to supply a very needed demand. He went on to create RollerCoaster Tycoon, coding it by hand in the arcane language of 886 assembly. And we have to also thank Simon Foster for the graphic design, as it's an absolutely charming game. And this charming graphics is paired wonderfully with the music from John Broomhall. And with all of this combined, the success was massive and immediate, as it made 19 million in 1999. And when it came to unit sales, it was actually number 1 in 1999, beating both SimCity and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? What? But RollerCoaster Tycoon wasn't just an extraordinarily popular video game. It's helped people build a lasting legacy that has shaped people's real-life careers, and it's led developers to create a modded version of the game so that it could be played 2 decades later. So it's clear as day that RollerCoaster Tycoon tapped into that market in between SimCity and Age of Empires, and exploring why this is the case leads us to a fascinating study on consumer behaviour in gamers. Plus, frankly, it's a chance to talk about a game I really loved as a child. Which is why I want to talk about RollerCoaster Tycoon's wild ride to the top, how it became a multi-million-dollar game in 1999. In RollerCoaster Tycoon, you take on the role of an amusement park operator. Your goal is to construct a theme park from scratch. That entails everything from building rides to placing trash cans, to terraforming the land to balancing the books. The game requires your analytical skills to keep a complex enterprise running, but also lets your creativity run wild, allowing you to create fantastic roller coasters of which you could only dream of.
Welcome to the Universe Coaster.
This combination of the fantastical and financial makes it a really unique game. But making a unique game doesn't mean it can't fail in the market, which is why one of the most important things to do is to create a product market fit. But of course, it's not the only reason. So I'm going to talk today about other reasons why RollerCoaster Tycoon was able to make millions. First, RollerCoaster Tycoon was a technical marvel. At the time that RollerCoaster Tycoon came out, video games were still struggling to transition into 3D. You have to keep in mind that in 1998, only 42% of American households had a computer. And while technology in 1999 was by no means crude, it was not nearly as well developed, polished, or omnipresent as it is today. So to the modern eye, RollerCoaster Tycoon doesn't look like much, but this was a groundbreaking achievement for its time. RollerCoaster Tycoon stood out for its complexity and immersive experience. The game allowed thousands of virtual visitors to roam around an amusement park, ride your awesomely built roller coasters, eat a myriad of food, and then just throw it all up, making you buy loads of more handymen, costing you loads more money. The reason why RollerCoaster Tycoon was able to achieve this level of complexity and immersion was that it was written in x86 assembly code, a notoriously complicated programming language.
Something like C++ is what we call a high-level language. It's designed to make abstractions for the sake of convenience for the programmer, when x86 assembly is what we call a low-level language. It's the closest way you can interact with the hardware of a computer itself through code, as you are directly telling the machine where to put your data. You see those symbols like RBP? Well, those are what we call registers, which refers to an actual segment on your CPU. So as a result, going from C or C++ to assembly is the difference of putting numbers into a variable that you can personally name to manually loading it directly into a data location.
This makes programming in x86 assembly exponentially more difficult than programming in other language. And if you're interested in learning more about RollerCoaster Tycoon and x86 assembly, do click down below to Native Resolution's video, as RollerCoaster Tycoon is an incredibly in-depth game, and those 2 clips from his video only do it small justice. However, writing RollerCoaster Tycoon in this language meant that the game could use every available scrap of computing power to run the game with scalpel-like precision. This allowed every computer on the lousier end of what was available in 1999 to run this super complex game without a single bit of lag. And not many modern games can say that today. Now, RollerCoaster Tycoon was not the only game to be written in this code, but it was possibly the only game of its level of complexity to be written by a single developer. Now, the fact that it was written in this code was not a selling point on its own, nor being a single developer, but it allowed the game to do things that games made in C++ or Java couldn't. So in a roundabout way, it kinda was a selling point. But do you know what else it did? It tapped into the latent demand for Sandbox mode. Sandbox games are a genre within video games that give players a lot of creativity and freedom to do whatever they want. RollerCoaster Tycoon predates most of the popular Sandbox games we know today. For example, The Sims wasn't even released till 2000, followed by GTA 3, Roblox, and Minecraft. However, there are millions of Sandbox games out right now, making it one of the most popular genres in gaming. Most video games back then made players go through predefined levels, and being able to forge your own path was a wild and thrilling concept. Although the game technically has objectives and scenarios to play through, players can choose to play in a sandbox mode, designing their own amusement parks to their heart's content. This gives players a sense of ownership and emotional connection to their creations. They are most likely to share these creations with friends and family, which was evident in the case of RollerCoaster Tycoon, where players could showcase their amusement parks to others. However, the popularity of sandbox games was really early days and wasn't predicted or planned by game developers at all. The success of RollerCoaster Tycoon was evidence of latent demand that no one knew existed. Typically, companies will create a product based on demand, but in this case, the product was created and demand just happened to be there. And also, RollerCoaster Tycoon was really challenging, but also approachable and joyful. RollerCoaster Tycoon had a really weird way of juggling multiple different audiences, being able to cater both children and hardcore gamers alike. When I was young, I loved that I could create roller coasters and make my own parks. Did I understand complex economics in the game? Absolutely not. But I had fun, which is why we've seen games like Parkitect and Planet Coaster pop up in recent years. However, playing it again as an older gamer and having seen the people play it online, RollerCoaster Tycoon is actually a really crunchy, uncomplicated business simulator. But I would be lying if everyone treated RollerCoaster Tycoon like a crunchy business simulator, as there are many types of players for the game, including the classic, and the one we all know,
the murderer. Just an ordinary day at his theme park. Don't get stuck in here, though. This is fine. Oh yeah, this is perfect.
2 hours later.
Almost everybody in here. Now let's get rid of the path. Just a mass murder, nothing to worry about here.
It's really rare to find a game that accommodates kids and hardcore gamers alike. Even SimCity, which predates RollerCoaster Tycoon, whose third and fourth iterations I enjoyed as a child, were quite off-putting at times because it was just too hard to manage a city. I never had that problem with RollerCoaster Tycoon, though I did often fail. Just didn't feel like a failure. How could I feel like a failure when I was making awesome rides and hearing people laugh with joy? Okay, maybe that laugh's a little creepy, but let's get back to the topic at hand and talk about the legacy of Chris Sawyer. So Chris Sawyer had released a successful game called Transport Tycoon in 1994, and he used some of this revenue to travel to the United States and Europe to go visit theme parks and roller coasters. Though Sawyer said he hated roller coasters before, he became fond of them through these trips, and since has become a roller coaster enthusiast and had ridden at least 700 coasters. So he must undoubtedly had visited dozens, if not hundreds of amusement parks in his trips in order for this to be true. So you know for a fact that there are some genuine, absolute love for roller coasters. So when it came to design RollerCoaster Tycoon, he understood them so well enough to recreate the atmosphere in the game, and you can see it in the little touches that feel so authentic to a roller coaster theme park.
Every time I ride a new ride, it does make me think about my games and what I could put into the games or what I could change in the games. And this is the kind of ride that I like building in my games. You're going through things and close to the scenery. Just a really fun ride, so I'm really looking forward to riding it.
So you can see the genuine authenticity in his words, and he knows that the laughter and the carnival music that blend with one another are so important for the game. You can see the research and the endless options available for decorating the park, all of which have been drawn from real inspiration.
It's got a fantastic first launch, it's quite a long ride. You get to the second launch and it carries on and it carries on. I love the way it lifts you out of your seat, I love the way it goes through all the rock and all the scenery and things. Absolutely fantastic.
And when it came to the primer guidebook, there is over 200 pages, practically a small novel at this point, showing there is so much depth to this game and strategy that you need to take into consideration. Had he not had such a love for amusement parks, the economic simulation and coaster design would have still made for a very innovative game, but the immersion wouldn't have been there, and the game would not have quite inspired so many people to spread the good word about this wonderful game, and sales would have no doubt suffered massively because of it. But he didn't, and RollerCoaster Tycoon changed video games and built an enduring legacy because of it. So from what we've learned, the modern video game landscape is still to this day influenced by RollerCoaster Tycoon. We could primarily see this happen in the intense surge of Tycoon games that followed over the years. Everything you could imagine became a Tycoon game in one way or another. And since the game's launch, there's been multiple expansion packs, RollerCoaster Tycoon 2, RollerCoaster Tycoon 3, the amalgamation of 1 and 2 in Classic, and RollerCoaster Tycoon World.
If you will draw your attention to this region right here, you will see that this is completely wrong.
But the legacy still remains is the fact the original game has such a big following, and a sizable fanbase that made OpenRC 2. It's made by the lovers of the original two games, who got together to fix bugs and issues present in the original game, added some nice features such as the well-needed multiplayer support, cheat codes, the ability to remove height clearance restrictions, high definition support, and a true sandbox mode, truly standing out as one of the best mods of all time.
Oh. It's a fucking train in a tube. Who wants to go in the crazy bobsledding train? Whoa. What the fuck?
So as you can see, OpenRCT2 is wacky and wild, but I believe this really captures the true vision of Chris Sawyer's game. And that's where I want to leave things off, is when you make a product, a game, a thing that you put into the world, think about the impact you can have like Chris Sawyer did with RollerCoaster Tycoon. It was a game made with love, passion, and pride, and opened up an entire new sandbox genre for the future to come. Yes, SimCity had an impact, but not the level of impact that was fun and creative. And we all have to thank RollerCoaster Tycoon for it, and possibly Theme Hospital, and possibly other ones as well that were also very creative and fun. All these games are phenomenal sandboxes. And if you liked that video, then smash your brain into that subscribe button and make sure to tickle the bell before you go. And if you're still listening, then check out one of our other videos somewhere on the screen. And if none of those take your fancy, go check out our blog at Weird Marketing Tales. It's got loads of weird stuff.